Night has already fallen over the remote valley of Dien Bien Phu. For a moment, it sounds almost routine. The low drone of generators, the soft hum of radios, French voices murmuring over background static. Then, without warning, the valley is hit. A single distant whistle slices through the night, followed by a thunderous impact. Another, and another. Within seconds, heavy Viet Minh artillery is slamming into the French positions from every side. Deep underground in the command bunker, maps of the valley are pinned with colored flags and strings. The first shockwaves rattle the concrete, knocking dust from the ceiling. Coffee cups jump on the briefing table. A field telephone begins to ring, shrill and urgent, as an officer grabs the receiver and shouts to be heard over the noise. Another officer leans into a radio. Voice tight. Beatrice is under heavy fire. Repeat, Beatrice is under heavy fire. Up on the northern perimeter, at strong point, Beatrice, French paratroopers explode into motion. Men tumble out of dugouts, pulling on helmets and flak jackets as flares burst overhead and turn the hilltop white. Incoming shells tear into the trenches, throwing up fountains of earth and shattered timber. The night sky strobes with fire as defenders dive for cover, trying to return fire into the darkness. High above them, in the jungle-covered heights, the source of the storm is hidden. Along narrow, muddy gun pits cut into the slopes, Viet Minh artillery crews work in a rhythm they have rehearsed for weeks. Bare-chested in the humid night, they swing heavy shells into the breaches, slam them shut, fire, and reload. Each gun recoils, disappears again into smoke and foliage, then speaks once more. The valley below flashes with each impact. In a remote valley near the border of Laos, the French believed they had built an air-landed fortress that would break the Viet Minh once and for all. On the night of March 13, 1954, they began to discover that the fortress was actually a trap. Out on the ruined airstrip, shells walk their way down the runway, turning the French lifeline into a burning line of craters. Medical posts fill in minutes, stretchers jammed in narrow corridors, staff running out of space before they run out of wounded. Officers stare at situation boards and radio reports, realizing that the enemy's artillery is stronger, closer, and far more accurate than anyone in this valley expected. How did one of the best-equipped French forces in Indochina end up surrounded in a muddy valley they could not escape? And how did this battle, far from Paris and Hanoi, bring down a colonial empire and change the future of Vietnam? To understand why Dien Bien Phu was so important and so deadly, we have to go back to 1953. By then, the First Indochina War had already been grinding on for years. French forces fought the Viet Minh in jungles, mountains, rice paddies, and small villages scattered across northern Vietnam. Patrols swept valleys, outposts rose and fell, and the front lines were as much political as they were military. The war was draining France. It was costing money the country did not really have, men it could not easily replace, and political capital that was disappearing fast in Paris. Newspapers carried bad news from Indochina almost every month. The public was tired. Politicians were under pressure. In Paris and in the headquarters of the French Far East Expeditionary Corps, the same question kept coming back. When will this end? And how do we end it on our terms? The answer, some believed, was a decisive victory, a single crushing blow that would break the Viet Minh's main forces and prove, to allies and enemies alike, that France still controlled Indochina. Into this situation stepped a new commander, General Henri Navarre. Navarre's mission was simple to say and hard to achieve: stabilize the front, rebuild confidence, and then deliver a knockout punch. On paper, his armies still had advantages: better artillery, tanks, aircraft, and a professional officer corps. The Viet Minh, in theory, should not be able to stand up to a fully prepared French strongpoint. So Navarre's staff refined a strategy that had been used before: force the Viet Minh to attack a strongly fortified camp, far from major cities, where French artillery and air power could concentrate and bleed the enemy white. For this, they needed a place where aircraft could land, a place that blocked Viet Minh movement, a place where French firepower would decide the battle. They chose a valley in the far northwest of Vietnam, near the border of Laos, Dien Bien Phu. Seen from above, Dien Bien Phu seemed to offer everything: a long, flat plain suitable for an airstrip, surrounding hills that, in theory, French troops and artillery could secure, and a location that sat astride important routes leading toward Laos, a way to block Viet Minh support to their allies there. French planners imagined an air-land base. Paratroopers would seize the valley, aircraft would fly in guns and supplies, engineers would build fortifications, and the Viet Minh would be forced to come and attack, on French terms. So they jumped. Parachutes blossomed over the green valley as French paratroopers dropped from the sky, landing in tall grass and muddy fields. They moved quickly to clear the area, secure the future runway, and push patrols toward the surrounding slopes. Then came the construction. Bulldozers carved a strip of earth into a proper runway, transforming a remote valley into an airhead that could receive transport planes from bases hundreds of kilometers away. Engineers dug bunkers and trenches, poured concrete, and laid out defensive rings. The positions were given names, female names, almost like characters in a play: Beatrice, Gabrielle, Huguette, Dominique, Eliane, Isabelle, a necklace of strong points meant to ring the valley with fire. Tanks were flown in pieces, assembled on the ground, and positioned near likely avenues of attack. Artillery batteries were emplaced to cover the perimeter. Anti-aircraft guns ringed the strip to protect incoming planes. From the air, the French camp looked modern, organized, and confident. From the French perspective, it made sense. They had elite paratroopers, Foreign Legion units, artillery, tanks, and air support. The Viet Minh had no air force, no tanks, and, the French believed, only limited heavy artillery. In their minds, Dien Bien Phu was a fortress, a baited trap. From the air, the narrator might say, Dien Bien Phu looked like a modern stronghold. Paratroopers, tanks, air support, everything the French believed the Viet Minh could not match. But on the other side of the front line, in forests and caves far from the valley, another plan was forming. There, General Vo Nguyen Giap and the Viet Minh leadership studied the French move. They knew the risks of attacking a well-defended camp head-on. They had seen what French artillery and air power could do to poorly prepared assaults. But they also saw opportunity. Instead of being drawn into a quick, bloody collision on French terms, Giap chose a slower, harder path. He would turn the valley into a long, grinding siege. To do that, he needed to achieve something that many observers in the West considered impossible: bring heavy artillery, anti-aircraft guns, food, ammunition, and tens of thousands of soldiers into the hills overlooking Dien Bien Phu and keep them supplied. What followed has often been called a logistics miracle. Night after night, columns of Viet Minh troops and civilian porters moved along narrow jungle trails. Men and women pushed overloaded bicycles, stacked high with boxes of shells and sacks of rice. Others carried ammunition and supplies on shoulder poles, step after step, through mud and rain. Artillery pieces, some weighing several tons, were dragged up steep slopes by teams of soldiers hauling on ropes, inch by inch. Logs were laid down as rollers. When a gun reached its position, it was broken down, dug in and covered with camouflage. In the forests above Dien Bien Phu, entire gun lines disappeared into the hillsides. Guns were hidden under netting and foliage, protected by thick overhead cover, and connected by trenches and tunnels that allowed crews to fire and then vanish. From the valley floor, most of these positions could not be seen. But they could see the valley. French commanders looked at their ring of strong points and saw a fortified camp at the heart of the valley. Giap saw something else, an army that had chosen to sit at the bottom of a bowl, surrounded by hills that could be turned into one giant ring of guns. Even in war, there are evenings that feel almost routine. On 13th of March 1954, as the sun drops behind the hills around Dien Bien Phu, the valley looks quiet from the French side. Patrols return, reports are filed, cooks finish the evening meal. At strong point Beatrice, on the northern rim of the defensive ring, paratroopers settle in for another night of watch and waiting. The generators hum. Radios crackle softly. Men write letters under dim lamps or share cigarettes in the shallow trenches overlooking the dark tree line. Then, the valley changes in an instant. Somewhere in the hills, a Viet Minh gun crew finishes loading. A shell slides home. The breech slams shut. A single whistle cuts the air, followed by a massive impact on the far side of the valley. Within seconds, dozens of guns join in. From multiple slopes and hidden positions, Viet Minh artillery opens fire simultaneously. The calm evening is blown apart. Beatrice takes some of the heaviest fire. Shells tear into trenches and bunkers, smashing sandbags, flipping corrugated roofing, showering earth into the dugouts below. Radios spit static and broken voices. The strongpoint's internal phone lines ring non-stop as commanders try to understand how much of the position is still intact. In the command bunker at the center of the valley, officers bend over the map as reports pour in. Beatrice under intense bombardment. Lines cut. Cannot raise one of the outposts. They had expected the Viet Minh to have artillery. They had not expected this much. Firing this accurately from hillsides the French thought were too steep and too remote for heavy guns. On Beatrice, the bombardment does not let up. Whenever one section of trenches goes quiet, shells begin falling somewhere else. Communication posts, mortar pits, suspected artillery observation points. The strongpoint is being systematically pounded. Then, under cover of the barrage, Viet Minh infantry begins to move. From their trench lines higher up, units advance down the slope, using shell holes, darkness, and prepared paths to close the distance. The night sky is torn open by flares. French flares trying to spot attackers. Viet Minh flares marking targets for supporting fire. Paratroopers at Beatrice fight to hold firing positions that are collapsing around them. They call for fire support, for reinforcements, for clearer orders, their voices almost swallowed by the noise of the guns. The defenders push back as long as they can, but they are outnumbered, shaken, and increasingly isolated. In just a few hours of fighting, Beatrice is overrun. When the sun rises over Dien Bien Phu the next morning, the northern horizon has changed. One of the key strongpoints on the defensive ring is gone, replaced by smoke, shattered earth, and positions now in Viet Minh hands. French commanders are shocked. Beatrice was supposed to be a tough nut to crack, a strong anchor point for the perimeter. Its loss on the very first night of major fighting is more than a tactical setback. It is a warning. The next blow lands almost immediately. On 14th and 15th of March, the pattern repeats, this time against strongpoint Gabrielle. Again, the same terrifying rhythm. First, the hills light up with artillery. Gabrielle is hammered by heavy shells, its defenses shredded under a storm of explosions. Then, infantry assaults follow, coordinated and relentless, pressing into the gaps that the artillery has torn open. French units launch counterattacks to retake lost ground. They fight up slopes that have been turned into cratered moonscapes, trying to seize back trenches that changed hands in the dark. But the momentum is against them. Supplies are limited, command and control is breaking down, and the Viet Minh have no intention of giving up ground they've paid so much to take. By the time the shooting dies down, Gabrielle, like Beatrice, is lost. 2 strong points, 2 key pieces in the northern defensive ring, have disappeared in the space of just a few days. Inside French headquarters, disbelief hardens into something more serious. Staff officers review aerial photos and intelligence reports, trying to answer a simple question. How did they get so many guns up there? The answer, increasingly, doesn't matter. What matters is that those guns are there now, well dug in, well concealed, and firing with deadly effect. The realization spreads through the French command. We are being fired on from guns we can't see, from hills we thought they could not possibly use. And the Viet Minh are not finished. With Beatrice and Gabrielle gone, the airfield becomes the next target. Dien Bien Phu is an air-land fortress. Almost everything the French need, ammunition, food, medical supplies, reinforcements, comes in by air. The runway is the camp's beating heart. If the enemy can damage it badly enough, the garrison will be living on borrowed time. Viet Minh gunners turn their attention toward the strip. Transport planes begin to take fire on their approach. Pilots steer through curtains of flak and tracer rounds, trying to line up on a runway that is now dotted with fresh craters and smoking wreckage. Some aircraft manage to land, bouncing hard on broken tarmac, rolling past pits and debris as crews throw supplies out as fast as they can.
Here, doctor.
Others are hit on approach, engines burning, forced to pull away or crash within sight of the valley. A few are struck as they sit exposed on the ground, unable to take off again before the next barrage. As the runway becomes more dangerous, more flights are forced to switch to parachute drops. But dropping from higher altitudes to avoid anti-aircraft fire means less accuracy. Winds push canisters off target. From French trenches, soldiers watch in frustration as parachutes drift down onto hills and tree lines now held by Viet Minh units. Containers packed with ammunition, rations, and medicine land beyond their reach, only to be collected and carried away by the very forces besieging them. In some sectors, French troops cheer when a supply chute falls close and scramble to pull it in. In others, they just watch silently as precious cargo drifts to the wrong side of the battlefield. The airstrip, the narrator explains, that was supposed to make this camp untouchable was being destroyed in front of the garrison's eyes. Without the runway, Dien Bien Phu was not a fortress. It was a bowl filling with fire. Inside aid posts and underground hospitals, the pressure mounts. French wounded begin to pile up. Stretcher after stretcher arrives. Medical staff work around the clock in cramped, dimly lit spaces, using whatever supplies they have left. As the days pass, bandages, antibiotics, and surgical equipment all run low. The sound of artillery overhead is constant, a rolling thunder that never fully stops. Radio operators tap out urgent messages, requests for more supplies, more ammunition, more reinforcements, anything that might stabilize the situation. Replies from higher headquarters are often hopeful, but hope does not stop shells or repair runways. At the same time, outside the perimeter, Viet Minh trenches begin to snake closer to the French lines. What started as distant gun pits in the hills now extends down the slopes in a web of earthworks. Zigzag trenches and communication tunnels inch their way toward the outer strongpoints, night after night, shovel strike by shovel strike. With each new stretch of trench, Viet Minh infantry can get closer under cover, shielded from direct fire. From above, If anyone could see through the smoke and dust, it would look like a tightening net. In just a few days, Dien Bien Phu has shifted from trap to prison. The question facing the men inside the valley is no longer whether the Viet Minh can attack the camp. They are attacking it already, from above, from the sides, and now from beneath the guns. The new question is much harsher. How long can the garrison survive in a valley where the sky is closing, the ground is being eaten away by trenches, and the lifeline of the runway is disappearing under fire? The first nights at Dien Bien Phu teach Giap a hard lesson. Early assaults against strongpoints like Beatrice and Gabrielle have been costly. Viet Minh units paid in blood to take positions that the French thought were secure. The victories are real, but the price is high. If the battle continues as a series of frontal charges against bunkers covered by artillery, the cost could become unbearable. Giap makes a crucial decision. Instead of trying to win the valley in a few days with head-on attacks, he chooses something older, slower, and far more suffocating. Classic siege warfare. From that moment on, Dien Bien Phu is no longer just a battlefield. It becomes a slow-moving disaster measured in meters of dirt and days of exhaustion. On the hills around the valley, Viet Minh soldiers and laborers begin to dig. They dig trenches that zigzag down the slopes, always angled to avoid giving French machine gunners a straight line of fire. They dig communication tunnels to move men and ammunition under cover. They dig narrow saps, forward listening posts and assault trenches that creep closer and closer to the French wire. If you could watch it from above in time-lapse, the pattern would look like brown fingers reaching down into the green valley. Day after day, night after night, men work with shovels, picks, and even their bare hands. They stoop low to stay below the lip of the trench, heads down, earth piling up in front of them. Flares and star shells fired by the French turn the sky into harsh white light, freezing their silhouettes against the ground for a second, before darkness returns. Every meter gained in the dirt brings the Viet Minh another meter closer to the French positions. Inside the French camp, the siege is felt in every sense. Artillery fire becomes a constant presence. Some days the bombardment is intense. Other days it is more sporadic, but it never truly stops. Shells fall on trenches, on command posts, on the already shattered airstrip. Men learn to read the whistle of incoming fire and try to guess, in the half-second before impact, whether they should duck or run. The trenches that were supposed to protect the garrison are now filled with water and mud. Tropical rains and smashed drainage systems turn the valley into a swamp. Boots rot on men's feet. Bunkers collapse under the weight of wet earth. Rats find their way into dugouts and food stores. In the medical tents and underground hospitals, the situation grows worse. Stretcher after stretcher arrives. Bandaged men lie shoulder to shoulder on the floor, some waiting for surgery, others simply waiting. Doctors and nurses work until they can barely stand, improvising when supplies run low. Food begins to be rationed more strictly. Ammunition is carefully counted before each engagement. Medicines and dressings are used and reused. Each new day feels a little more cramped, a little more desperate. Some of the hardest fighting now centers around a handful of names that, to the men in the valley, mean everything. Huguette, Dominique, Eliane, Isabelle. Near the cratered remains of the runway, the cluster of positions called Huguette fights to keep any kind of landing zone open. Every meter of ground lost around Huguette makes it harder for aircraft to come in low. Harder to drop supplies where the French need them. Harder to imagine any kind of evacuation. On the heights closer to the center of the valley, Dominique and Eliane dominate key approaches. They are not just hills. They are firing platforms that look directly into the French heart of Dien Bien Phu. As long as the French hold them, they can still claim depth in their defenses. As soon as they weaken, the whole middle of the valley is at risk. These strongpoints become the scene of repeated assaults and counter-assaults. One night, Viet Minh infantry storms up the slopes under a cover of artillery, explosions walking their way up the hillside. Trenches and bunkers are overrun. At dawn, French paratroopers and legionnaires counterattack, climbing over shattered earth and bodies of destroyed equipment to try to retake lost ground. Positions change hands once, twice, sometimes more. Each time it happens, the trenches are more chewed up, the bunkers more broken, the defensive wire more tangled and useless. Each hill that is held is a little less hill and a little more crater. The night battles at Dien Bien Phu look and sound like scenes from a war film, but they are real. Flares turn the valley into a flickering stage. For a few seconds at a time, the battlefield is flooded with white light, showing men running, firing, diving into shell holes. Then the flare burns out, and everything disappears back into darkness, leaving only the flash of gunfire and the streaks of tracer rounds to mark where the living still move. Tracers arc across the valley in red and green lines, drawing deadly shapes in the air. Viet Minh troops slog forward through mud and wire, throwing themselves into shell craters and captured trenches to gain a few more meters. French paratroopers and legionnaires, soaked, exhausted, and covered in dirt, hold shattered bunkers with whatever ammunition they have left, firing into the night until barrels glow. Every side of the valley is under pressure. Each strongpoint that falls or is cut off is like a tooth knocked out of a jaw. Elian comes under almost constant attack. The hill, once a well-fortified point, turns into a moonscape of overlapping craters. French units cling to pieces of ground, counterattacking whenever they can, even as their numbers and supplies shrink. Dominique is compromised. Its ability to support neighboring positions is reduced as trench lines and artillery fire chip away at it. What was once a single strongpoint becomes a fragmented patchwork of contested ground. Around the airstrip, Huguet is gradually cut off. Viet Minh trenches and positions squeeze in, limiting movement between Huguet and the rest of the camp. The possibility of using even a portion of the runway shrinks with every passing day and every new crater. To the south, Isabelle finds itself increasingly alone. Originally part of the same defensive system, it slowly becomes an isolated outpost, separated by fire and by Viet Minh trenches from the main fortress. Messages to and from Isabelle carry a different tone, as the men there realize that help may never reach them. By early May 1954, the pattern is clear. French command, both in the valley and outside, receives bad news from all fronts. Attempts to create a relief operation on the ground have failed. Efforts to bring in decisive air support are blocked by weather, anti-aircraft fire, and the simple reality that there is nowhere safe left to land. Inside Dien Bien Phu, the remaining strongpoints are hanging on, but only just. Viet Minh trenches have now reached the wire of the central positions. Artillery fire is not just coming from the hills. Some guns are firing almost from the valley's edge at point-blank range. Mortars and recoilless rifles rain down from trenches that are now close enough for defenders to hear voices on the other side. The noose is closed. On 7th May 1954, the last day of the battle, Viet Minh forces launch a series of coordinated assaults against what remains of the French defenses. Under a sky heavy with smoke and low clouds, attacks crash into the surviving positions around the command center. What used to be a connected defensive ring is now a series of isolated islands of resistance. Bunkers, trench corners, and half-destroyed strongpoints. French units fight back as best they can, but they are outnumbered, exhausted, and nearly out of everything that makes a modern army dangerous. Shells, bullets, grenades, medical supplies, even food. Communications break down as lines are cut and radios fail. Step by step, fire by fire, the defenders are forced back toward the center of the camp. In the command bunker, the room that once held tidy maps and confident plans is now a place of exhaustion. Maps lie scattered, marked with arrows that no longer represent real units. Radios crackle with incomplete messages, then go silent. The officers are gaunt, sleepless, their uniforms stained with mud and dust. At last, there is nothing left to command. Colonel Christian de Castries, the French commander in Dien Bien Phu, and his staff accept the inevitable. Surrounded on all sides, with their position collapsing above them and no realistic hope of relief, they agree to surrender. Above ground, the battle that has lasted 56 days comes to an end. On shattered strongpoints and captured hills, Viet Minh soldiers raise victory flags or signal flares. French troops, muddy and exhausted, are disarmed and assembled, many of them limping or supporting wounded comrades. The valley that once echoed with artillery fire falls into a heavy, stunned quiet. The narrator's voice may soften here.
The guns did not fall silent.
After 56 days, the guns at Dien Bien Phu did not fall silent because the battle had been neatly won. They fell silent because there was almost nothing left in the valley that could keep fighting. The fortress in the valley has fallen, but the shock waves from its collapse are only beginning to move outward. When the guns finally fall silent over Dien Bien Phu, the valley does not feel like a place of victory or defeat. It feels like a place that has been emptied. In the days after the surrender, columns of French prisoners begin to leave the camp, marching away under Viet Minh guard. Many are already weak from wounds, hunger, and weeks without proper sleep. They walk past the shattered bunkers where they once fought, past burned-out vehicles, past trenches collapsing in on themselves. On the slopes above them, Viet Minh burial parties move quietly among long rows of freshly turned earth. Simple graves are marked in lines along the hillsides, each one a reminder that victory has its own price. If you pull back and look at the valley as a whole, the battlefield is almost unrecognizable as the green plain it once was. It has become a landscape of trenches, shell craters, burned bunkers, and scattered wreckage, a maze of scars carved into the earth by 56 days of siege. The human cost is hard to fully measure. On the French side, thousands have been killed, wounded, or captured. Many of those who survived the battle will now face long marches and harsh conditions as prisoners of war. On the Viet Minh side, victory has come at the cost of heavy casualties, units that were nearly destroyed in the assaults, families who will never see their sons return from the hills above the valley. And around them all are the people who did not choose this battle. The villagers of the region, whose fields have been churned into mud, whose homes have been damaged or abandoned, whose lives have been bent around a war they did not control. Their losses are not always recorded in official histories, but they are real, and they last long after the last shot is fired. News of what has happened at Dien Bien Phu travels quickly. In Paris, headlines and radio broadcasts announce the fall of the fortress. Public and political will, already fragile, begins to collapse. Many in France have suspected for some time that the war in Indochina cannot be won on acceptable terms. Dien Bien Phu turns suspicion into certainty.
I carried the water for them.
At the Geneva conference, diplomats sit around a table thousands of kilometers away from the muddy valley and search for a way out. Maps are unfolded, lines are drawn and redrawn. Arguments rise and fall. Out of these negotiations comes a new reality. France agrees to withdraw from Indochina. Vietnam is temporarily divided along the 17th parallel. into a northern zone and a southern zone, with promises about future elections that will never be fully kept. On one level, Dien Bien Phu ends the French war in Indochina, but on another level, it opens the door to something larger. The defeat of a European colonial power by an Asian revolutionary army sends a shockwave through the world. Movements in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia study what happened in this valley and draw their own conclusions. Military planners in other countries do the same. In the years that follow, the struggle for Vietnam does not end. It changes shape. New flags, new uniforms, and new foreign powers enter the story. The United States, among others, will now become deeply involved in the future of a country that was supposed to be settled at Geneva. Dien Bien Phu becomes a symbol of an Asian army built from peasants and workers, defeating a better-armed colonial force, a symbol of the limits of air power and fixed fortresses when faced with an enemy that can move through jungle, dig into hills, and accept long, grinding battles of attrition, and a symbol of what can happen when a war about land and independence is misunderstood as only a war about numbers and technology. Today, the valley of Dien Bien Phu looks very different. There are cemeteries and memorials on the hills, where visitors can read names and dates carved into stone. Some of the old French bunkers have been preserved, their concrete cracked but still standing, open to the sky. Artillery pieces sit in museum displays, no longer hidden under camouflage nets, but presented under glass and spotlights. School groups walk along paths where trenches once ran. Tourists stand at observation points, looking down at the valley with maps and guidebooks in hand. Former soldiers and their families sometimes return, moving more slowly now, pointing at places that exist half on the ground and half in memory. In this valley, a colonial war ended, and another, more global struggle for Vietnam's future began. Dien Bien Phu did not just change the map of Indochina. It changed how the world understood the power of people fighting for control of their own country. If you want more cinematic, historically grounded documentaries about the wars that shaped Vietnam, from Dien Bien Phu to Hue, Khe Sanh, and the fall of Saigon, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. And if your family lived through this period, or if you've visited Dien Bien Phu yourself, share your stories in the comments below. History is not just dates and places. It's people and the choices they made when everything around them was under fire.